Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 50, Franny and the Professor. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Cece's brother Noel comes for a visit. Noel immediately picks up on there being something between Fran and Maxwell, which Cece immediately and emphatically denies. Noel suggests that they have some fun and they wager whether Noel can get Fran to be a contestant on Jeopardy. If Noel succeeds, he wins Cece's racehorse. If he fails, Cece gets his Lamborghini. After some painful cramming sessions with Noel, Fran takes and passes the test to appear on Jeopardy. Cece is heartbroken because she spent over $200,000 on the stallion. Maxwell is about to tell her about the Babcock's bet when she explains how important it is to her that a man like Noel believed in her. So Maxwell changes his tune and merely wishes her luck. Despite a momentary freakout before the show and involuntary schwitzing on air, Fran appears on Jeopardy and, despite initially appearing down and out, she wins. Meanwhile, Maxwell's upset and obsessing over the fact that Andrew Lloyd Webber was invited to President Clinton's Renaissance weekend as the Broadway community's representative. Fran pulled some strings behind the scenes to get Maxwell an invitation, hand-delivered by Roger Clinton, who has just moved into the townhouse next door. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
Nope, you got it.
Awesome, thank you. Would you like to take us to scene one?
Yes, so we begin in the dining room. It's breakfast time. And I believe Fran's in a robe once again.
A pink one.
Yes. And so they're asking after how the wedding was last night. And it was a beautiful wedding. Dr. Quinn looks so beautiful, because
Right.
of course at first you think she and Val went to a wedding. Nope. They were watching Dr. Quinn.
Correct.
And what we learn is that you don't need TV guide. You can just ask Fran what's on, and they test this out. Brighton's asking, on channel 29, what's after the Ghost and Mrs. Muir? Oh, Family Affair. Then The Munsters with Marilyn 2. Then Bewitched with Darren 1 and
Mrs. Kravitz.
Mrs. Kravitz 2. And we get into this whole banter about Fran, and whether knowing all of that, is she old or okay, what leads into that? Because I'm not quite sure. I have old or just stupid.
Yeah, so Maxwell says to her something along the lines of, wow, Miss Fine, you seem to know more about 60s television than most people your age have forgotten.
Yeah.
And so then she says, are you calling me old or just stupid?
Mm-hmm.
And Maxwell chooses to not answer.
Correct. Well, yeah, and then childlike and charming.
Right. You have a childlike quality that I find absolutely charming.
Mm-hmm. Charming. There's something. What did she say? Because I have what Niles says.
She turns to Niles and says, childlike quality? And he says,
just stupid.
Exactly.
So, again, so we're having this whole conversation about Fran and all of this, and of course she's still trying to say she's not stupid or anything, but then she points out that Dumb and Dumber is playing at the Dollar Theater, and she's also trying to get Maxwell to engage in conversation with her because she's saying, well, I'm with the children all the time. I don't have a chance to talk with adults about deeper topics.
Mm-hmm.
So she's kind of pushing Maxwell to kind of engage her in an adult conversation because his head's, he's buried in his newspaper.
Right.
And so he brings up the topic, affirmative action, for or against. And she says, against. Those creams don't work.
Right.
So that is a failure on that attempt. But yeah, did you have anything to add in particular to that scene?
So just on her commentary about affirmative action, she says she's against get rid of affirmative action. My mother's been smearing those creams on her legs for years and still looks like she fell asleep in a wicker chair.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Yeah.
quite what Maxwell had in mind.
Nope.
So that's all I wanted to add to that scene.
Yeah. Will you take us to the office?
I'd love to. So we're in the office and we're there with Fran and Maxwell's sitting at his desk and he again has a newspaper, and Fran is like over in the like far, I guess, left back corner, and she's standing on something and she has binoculars and she's peering out the glass doors, outside, and she's giving commentary on what she's watching. Ooh, now they're unloading a couch. Nope, it's a sectional. Nope, it's a love seat in a chaise. Nope, nope. And needless to say, that's very annoying for anyone who's not her, particularly Maxwell, who doesn't care. And he basically yells at her to stop. And she says, "Hey, what if the person moving in is a single guy? If he hears you yelling at me, he'll think we're married." Which, interesting view of marriage. Um, and he apologizes that he's kind of in a grumpy mood because he's obsessing about something in the newspaper. And so she asks him, "Do you want to talk about it?" And he kind of like demurs. He's like, "I don't think it's anything you'd be interested in." And her response is, "I could fake it. Wouldn't be the first time."
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those double entendres you wouldn't pick up on as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hear from Maxwell that he's very upset that he wasn't invited to President Clinton's Renaissance weekend. And Fran doesn't understand what the Renaissance weekend is and thinks he's talking about a Renaissance fair. And her comment is, "Tights and a pointy hat. That's not his best look."
Mm-hmm.
But so Maxwell, tries to explain there's a difference. And he explains that, there's one name, the Broadway community only gets one person invited, and the one name that's ahead of me. And so she starts going through the alphabet and she comes up with Felicia Richard.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not who Maxwell's thinking of. It's no, Andrew Lloyd Webber. W is before S, Fran says. They're calling me stupid. Um, so I consider this all one big scene, but I don't know if you want to stop here.
Go for it.
Okay. So Maxwell and Fran leave the office and they go into the living room, and Cece's there, Niles is there. I'd say the gang's all here, but the kids aren't there. And Maxwell sort of says to Cece, "Where's this brother of yours?" And Fran had already started walking away, but she walks right back. "Brother? There's a brother coming? Is he short, ugly, and married?" Cece's like, "No, why?" She's like, "Well, then I gotta change." And Cece tries to dissuade her by saying, "Nanny, fine. He's a full-time professor at Northwestern University." And Fran's like, "I don't mind moving down south." And so she I think that's the point at which she leaves to go get changed. And when she comes back down, I'd like to talk about her outfits.
Mm-hmm.
So, Cece starts walking down memory lane and she's, really excited her brother is coming and they have this really good relationship. Every summer he took her to the horse show. And Niles can't help but chime in, "Did you ever win?" Maxwell's smoking a cigar and Cece turns to him and says, "Maxwell, will you put that out? It's stinking up the house." He's like, "Oh, Cece, I thought you liked cigars." She's like, "No, I meant him," looking at Niles. The doorbell rings and in comes who we find out is Cece's brother, Noel. And they sort of greet each other, not quite not with a real hug, but they sort of arm wrestle, and Cece wins. And so he gives her money, which I think is where we get the first clue that their relationship is a little unique.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes the money. "I smell Lady Stetson. Mummy gave you this." And they go back and forth about what Mummy gave them, the Beamer, the Benz. And then he stops. "Mummy died yesterday." And, he got all somber and sad. And instead of Cece getting upset, she says, "Ooh, what'd you get?"
Mm-hmm.
And she sort of, they start laughing and she explains to everyone that he used to keep me in stitches with all the Mummy died stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so they're a little strange.
Yes.
So Fran comes in and she makes an entrance. I didn't know we had company. She comes down the stairs, making a big entrance, and she doesn't stick her hand out, doesn't introduce herself, but instead she touches his arm and leans against him. "Isn't anyone going to introduce us?" And so Cece does. "This is my charming, wealthy, educated brother, Noel. Noel, this is the help." And he at least has some better manners than Cece. And he introduces himself. I'm Dr. Noel Babcock. And she's like, Fran's response is, ooh, a teacher and a doctor. Your mother must be kvelling.
Mhm.
And so the conversation from the breakfast table comes up again here, where she, it seems like Maxwell wants her to leave. And her commentary is that he thinks I can't handle an adult conversation. And then she sort of proves his point by pulling out of her purse a juice box and says, want a juicy juice? And she sort of concludes that, like, well, maybe I'd learn something if I hung out with the professor. It worked for Marianne and Ginger.
Mhm.
Um, I do think it's worth commenting on her attire here instead of waiting till the end. Do you agree?
Yeah. Go for it.
So in the scene when we started the scene in the office, Fran was wearing, a typical Fran Fine outfit, black, like, I'm not sure it's a turtleneck, but it's a black long sleeve shirt. And then it's like I think it's a leopard print, like skirt, and then like black
The animal.
tights.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it's an animal print, right?
Mhm.
Um, but like she feels like she has to change. And then she comes down in, so she still has on the black long sleeve shirt and the black tights, but she's put a dress over it. And the dress is it sequined? It's not sequined. It's bejazzled, I guess.
Mhm.
It looks like it looks like it's been
Yeah.
it looks like it's three-dimensional. It has like little fake stones, and it has green and pink and blue, and it sparkles, right? Like,
Mhm.
um, it's clear from that she knew there was going to be company. Like, even if we hadn't seen her race up to change, like she wouldn't just be walking around in
Mhm.
that. Anyway, do you
Like
want
a
to add?
special occasion kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, like it's too fancy for everyday wear.
Mhm.
I think she probably would have been better off with what she was wearing initially.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page.
Mhm.
Um, do you have anything you want to add to that scene, or do you want to, I guess, keep us in the living room?
Yeah. Well, we're still in the living room, and this time Cece and Noel are still talking with each other, and again, commenting on this. The whole theme this episode is, Fran, her intelligence, adult, child, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so, Cece's commenting, I believe it's Cece who says that she went to the school of, Nick at Night School,
Mm-hmm.
what was where Fran went. But Noel, is like, oh, well, wouldn't it be fun? No, I thought that was against the law. Um,
Yeah, it's an awkward exchange, like
yeah.
uncomfortable for the audience, I think.
But he's basically trying to say, she can be taught. And then Cece's like, well, she thought Clarence Thomas was part of on the mod squad.
Hmm.
So this is where we get into the bet that underlies this episode. It's his Lamborghini against Cece's thoroughbred.
Right.
And they're you can tell they're kind of competitive, right? When it comes to money and like material wealth, right?
Oh yeah.
And so basically Cece's like, get her on Jeopardy. And I believe it's him. Uh is it him that says, you know, get behind that racehorse?
So yeah. She says that she can't wait to get behind the wheel of that car,
Ah,
and he
yeah, and
responds,
he can't he can't wait to get behind that racehorse. Then he's like, oh wait.
"Yeah." Again,
Uh,
it's
didn't
awkward
mean
and
it like that.
yeah, it's awkward and uncomfortable.
Yeah, but essentially this scene is just setting up that bet between Cece and her brother.
Right.
Um, and the whole goal for Noel is to get Fran onto Jeopardy.
Correct. The
Want to add anything else?
Yeah, the one thing I want to add is the scene, as we've established, is just between Noel and Cece. And his question to her is something going on with Max and Nanny? And
Ah,
Cece immediately responds, no. I mean, Maxwell is an educated man and she went to Nick at Night school. So like
Mm,
there's that immediate like, no, like absolutely not. How can you possibly suggest that? And then she like
mm,
takes a step back and explains why that could not possibly be the case.
mhm. Yeah. Thanks for adding that.
Yeah.
Do you want to continue with us still in the living room?
Sure. But now we have a different, cast of characters. We have Fran and Noel together. Um, and she's on the phone with her mother, and her mother is asking if Noel can write her a prescription for something. And Fran confirms that Noel, she's like, he's a PhD, and then like she's gonna say PhD, but then she turns to him, it's like, can you write prescriptions? No, he can't. And so she tells her mother, would you just call your HOMO?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm gonna be upfront. I don't really like this scene,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like the way it's written, it's written to make Fran sound dumb, like
Mm-hmm.
dumber than she is, and like that's the first example in that scene. Um, but Noel says to her something like, "Oh, I don't know why you're so uh, like you lack confidence in your smarts. After I heard after you were on Jeopardy." And she's like, "Who got on Jeopardy?" And he's like, "Oh, I heard you were on a game show. I just assumed." She's like, "Oh no, I was on Studs. It's not really a mind game." And then she like explains, "Oh, you have to be a genius to get on Jeopardy. My own cousin couldn't get on. She finds Waldo every week." And he's like, "Well, I bet you could do it." And she's like, "No, I couldn't find him every week, especially not when he's when they have those beach scenes and he's not wearing his shirt." And he's like, "No, I mean, get on Jeopardy. You want to try some questions?" And so she's like, "Okay." Like she's totally game for it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like, they get up and she starts flirting with him. "Alex, I love your tie." And he's just like, "What are you like?" He has no idea what she's doing. And she's
Mm-hmm.
like, "I heard that if you flirt with him, he locks up the other guy's buzzers." Um, it's just, it's not a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so do you want to add anything, or do you want to keep us in the living room?
Nope. We're still in the living room, but we can tell that they've been kind of at it, in terms of the practice questions.
Correct. Not added in a different way.
Yeah. Oh, yes. To clarify, they've been, you know, he's been asking questions. Like, for instance, a famous monarchy. Oh, a 72 Mercury. My ex-boyfriend Danny drove it, and but I made it famous.
But I'm the one who made it famous. She has
Yep.
this big grin on her face while she says that.
Okay. Okay. Different topic. Astronomy. What's the oldest body? You know, I think closest to the sun. Ooh, ooh, ooh. William Shatner.
Right.
And he goes, "Oh, my head." And she notes, "Oh, same thing you know, happens to Mr. Sheffield. Must be something in the room."
Exactly.
Huh. And Noel comments, he gets up to leave. And he's like, "Oh, I need to go get the steel belted radials stopped."
I have to stop payment on.
Yes, the stop payment on it, because obviously he is now doubting his ability to win the bet.
Correct.
So, he's walking out. Maxwell walks in, "Missed me?" Um, and this is kind of, uh, is it, is
So
it
so
Fran
he
who says inane?
Yes. So Noel leaves and Maxwell asks, "Oh, did Noel leave?" And she says, "Yes." And he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I missed him." And she's like, "Well, I miss him too." And that's when she gets into how it's nice to have a man around who notices my inane intelligence.
Yes.
Wrong word, Fran. Wrong word.
Yes. Um, and again, well, he noticed that when she moved in and she put a penny in the bidet and made a wish.
Yep.
So that's something new we've learned. But
Correct.
and they're talking about being stimulating, you
So
know,
Fran says that Noel finds her stimulating.
and Maxwell says it's not your mind that aroused his interest.
Correct.
And she goes, "You're jealous. You
No,
think
she doesn't.
oh, well, he says you think I'm jealous of Noel.
She says there's only one explanation for your negativity. And he says,
Ah,
oh, please, you think I'm jealous of Noel? And she's like, well, that makes two.
yes. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And this is kind of where again they devolve into an old married couple
Correct.
because it's like not reaching. Do you not want me to reach my full potential? You want to keep me in the kitchen barefoot and pregnant? You're the one who wanted children. You wanted what am I saying? um and but anyway, he's gonna block out the entire week. But he's not invited. You know, the category of Jeopardy is
Okay.
again, excuse me, my notes are all over.
So I can help.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Phone a friend. I need your help.
I'm always willing to help, assuming I have it in my notes. Otherwise, we're both, we're both lost. But so, you know, she says, you want to keep me in that kitchen barefoot and pregnant. And he responds, you're the one who wanted to have children and make it your full-time job. Oh God, what am I saying? And she's like, well, meanwhile, Professor Noel Babcock, PhD, thinks that I'm smart enough to get on Jeopardy. How do you like that? And he's like, Jeopardy. Remind me, what night does that tape? I should leave that night open. Never mind. I'll block out the whole week. They invite the champion back, And she's like, well, let's hope it's not the same night as Clinton's Renaissance weekend. Oh, look, it doesn't matter because you're not invited. And she's holding the newspaper at that point. He's like, let me see that. And she's like, no, it could be a category on Jeopardy. Member of the Broadway community that was invited to the Renaissance weekend. And he responds,
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
yeah.
No.
And she's like, that is incorrect. Really? The correct response is, who is Andrew Lloyd Webber?
And then he kind of lunges at her, right?
He chases her up the stairs.
Yes. Yeah.
So we have more of that physical humor. So.
But like that whole exchange, again, this is not the first time we've seen them kind of argue like an old married couple.
Correct. And he doesn't even know what he's saying.
Oh God, what am I saying?
Right. I mean, and it's funny because whenever they fall into this pattern, they say things that are just totally ridiculous. Like there was that episode we talked about a couple weeks ago where she says, and what am I to you? Well, you're my nanny. Your nanny? Ugh, fine. You caught me on a technicality. Like clearly she was hoping she was putting herself in a different role. We'll see more of their inane role playing, if you will.
And their inane intelligence.
Exactly.
Okay, can you take us to the office?
I would love to. So now we're back in the office and we're with Maxwell and Niles, and Maxwell's trying to work. And he finally is just like, it's no good, Niles. I can't concentrate. It's too bloody quiet. Why can't I focus? And Niles knows immediately what the problem is. And he says, perhaps this will help. And he goes and sits on Maxwell's desk the way Fran does, crosses his legs and says, oh, Mr. Sheffield. Ah! And Maxwell realizes, that's it, Niles. Miss Fine's not here. Oh, just trying to fill your void, sir. It's obvious you miss her, says Niles. And Maxwell can't acknowledge that he misses her. I do not. I'm just wondering where she is and what she's doing, which is entirely different from missing her. And Niles gives him an incredulous look, and Maxwell's like, what? And Niles says, oh, just wondering how you ended up there and I ended up here. It seems wrong somehow. And
he's kind of looking at like he has like some type of like dust cloth or whatever in his hand.
Yeah, like a duster or something.
Yeah.
And I mean, Niles is sort of right because Niles sees all these things going on that Fran and Maxwell are just totally oblivious to. But so, Maxwell sort of, is sharing what he's thinking about, which is how the relationship between Noel Babcock and Fran Fine doesn't make any sense. What could he want with her? What could he possibly want with her? And Niles, good on Niles for the record, he comes to Fran's defense. Is it beyond your comprehension that an intellectual man of the world can find Miss Fine intellectually stimulating? And Maxwell clearly can. No, really, Niles. Niles gives it up. Oh, all right, it's a bet. Miss Babcock's brother bet her he could get her on Jeopardy. And Maxwell's like, I knew it. And, again, Niles is being the grown up here. And he's like, "Oh, you're not going to rub it in her face, are you?" He's like, "No, no." And then he hears the door. He's like, "Is that the door?" And he gleefully runs out of his office into the foyer to greet them. And he's like, "Oh, I didn't hear you come in," which is clearly a lie since he, again, gleefully, like maniacally ran to the front door.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want me to continue? I
I kind of
Okay.
considered it kind of all one since he was so gleefully rushing in.
That's how I did it too. Okay, so he gleefully rushes in, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't hear you come in." And Fran tells him, "I passed the test. I'm gonna be on Jeopardy." And Maxwell's shocked. He can't believe it. Then
Mm-hmm.
Cece comes in and she's sobbing into a handkerchief. "I paid 200,000 for that stallion." And Niles, snarky as ever, says, "I hope he paid for the room." Um, and Noel basically says, he excuses himself, saying, "Well, if you'll excuse me, I have to see a man about a horse." And he
Mm-hmm.
leaves. And that kind of leaves Fran and Maxwell to talk to each other. Maxwell's like, "You passed the test?" And she's like, "Yes. You see, that's the difference between you and Noel. He thinks I'm a sponge." Before Noel left, he had commented about how Fran's thirsty little mind soaked up all that knowledge like a sponge. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
difference between Maxwell and Noel. Noel thinks she's a sponge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then Maxwell asks, "Are you through, Miss Fine?" And she's like, "No. You're so smart and powerful. Everyone always listens to everything you have to say." And he tries to interject Miss Fine, and she says, "Wait, I'm talking,"
Mm-hmm.
which you know harpoons what she just said. She's like, "We both know I'm not as smart or as cultured as you are. Remember when I first moved here and you asked me where was the Cabernet? And what did I say?" And he's like, "Next to cabin B." She's like,
Yep.
"Well, although I never did take Spanish." "Oh, Mr. Sheffield, you have no idea what gaining the respect from a man like Noel means to a girl like me. Now, what was it you wanted to say?" And like you can see him sort of turn on a dime, and he's like, "Good luck on Jeopardy, Miss Fine," because he realized he doesn't want to crush her.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
is there anything you want to add to that
And then
scene?
hugs. I have after good luck on Jeopardy, I have hugs and Queen for a day.
Yes. So he hugs her, and she says she leaves the scene basically saying, "I have to go call Ma. Um, no one in my family's been on a game show since my cousin Ira was queen for a day."
Gotcha.
As our listeners may remember, we met cousin Ira in the episode "I've Got a Secret."
Yes, that's correct.
All
So
right, would
now,
you like to
yeah,
take us to the game show?
yes. So we're at Jeopardy, and of course, um, this is before it's actually time for her to go on. Fran is clearly frazzled, very
Yes.
nervous. Um, and they're talking about again, they're a little bit trying to like quiz her to get her warmed up, I think.
Yeah,
But
she says, "Questions, kids, quiz me."
yes. And so I don't know if this is the question, but potpourri comes up first. And she's playing as if she's playing the game Pyramid, not Jeopardy, right?
Correct.
And I apologize. My notes are very illegible, but what is
Yeah.
the
So go ahead.
naming?
What is the what?
One of the questions.
Oh, so like you're right because they start with potpourri, and then she starts you know playing as if she's on pyramid, and they tell her, "No, no, wrong game show, wrong game show." Um, and then I don't. There are a number of different times where that happens. They give her a bunch of different what would be categories, I guess. And
Yeah.
then Maxwell comes over, Miss Fine, and greets her with Miss Fine, and her response is, "What is a nanny? Things that are single."
Yep. Well, and here's the thing too, is that she again, she's dressed up for the show, right?
Oh yeah,
She has a special outfit on and they're talking about, the style and stuff and they tell her she needs to like something she says, "I've already cut the tags
right.
for the
So
outfit."
So Maxwell tries to make her feel better by saying she doesn't have to go on. There are plenty of other contestants, all backups. And she's like, "Are you kidding? I already cut the tags out of this dress. I'm definitely going on."
And Gracie compliments her. And Fran's like, oh, beauty's not important. It's the brains. But then she's talking to the camera guy who's
Hmm.
passing by and she asks for the same filter that uh, Liz Taylor
That
had
they
in, well,
used
she
for
just said Liz, but Liz had in the
correct,
White Diamonds commercial.
correct.
And then I don't know how you count it, if you counted it same scene or different, because we kind of go forward a little bit in time.
We can count it however you would like. I've been doing a lot of talking, so if you'd like to do it, you can.
You can help me out too.
Okay.
But basically we're now kind of fast forward to Alex is kind of saying what each contestant is at. So one contestant's at 1600, one's at 4700, and then Fran, of course, is at negative 1300.
Correct.
And she is like using a fan. She is sweating.
Hmm.
And basically, they start up the questionings again, and it's inventors for, I believe, 100.
I
And
believe, yeah, that sounds right. I do also think that the two contestants were both closer to 5,000, not uh, as far apart as you said they were.
okay,
So it's just basically Fran is way, way behind.
okay, yeah. So yeah, because I have it written down, but maybe I didn't put a 4 for this, like, whatever. But
It's
yeah,
fine.
they're ahead.
Oh, yeah.
And the category though is inventors for 100, and the question is, who became in 1880, last name Thomas?
No,
What?
the name Thomas was made famous in 1880
Yes,
for this household invention.
exactly. And the first guy says light bulb, and obviously thinking like Thomas Edison. Nope. The other lady, the phonograph? No. And Fran was kind of checked out a bit.
She was filing her nails.
Yes. And so Alex Trebek is like, Fran, you want to try? And she like kind of repeats, and then she finally says the fork split English, is it
English
muffin?
muffin. You don't know what a fork split English muffin is?
No.
You are a deprived child.
But, in astonishment, Alex is like, you're absolutely right. And she starts saying, as if everybody would know, in 1875, da
Mr.
da da da.
Thomas
Da.
left England and closed up his shop for good to come to our country.
Yes. So, um, the next category, so she gets to choose, she
Hmm.
got this one, so it's food facts for 200, but oh, it's a daily double. And, she's betting that. So, they start, I
So
think she bet
usually,
1,000, I don't know. But the question is like red beets, Easter. He doesn't even finish the question, and
correct.
she brings, like, she buzzes in, borscht.
Hmm.
Oh, you're right. And now it's time for Final Jeopardy. And the question is like, which African city was incorporated in 30 BC after the suicide of Cleopatra? And Fran does this whole big thing of, oops, drop my earring. And
And
like
by
she goes,
dropped, what do you mean she did?
huh?
What do you mean by dropped? Did it just like fall or?
No, no, no. She kind of like t- tossed it.
Correct. Yeah, she
Uh,
tosses it across the room.
but she's like, oops, drop my earring. And she goes, and then she's kind of trying to cheat by looking over the shoulders of the other contestants as she's making her way back to her podium. And anyway, though, it's time to reveal the answers. Uh, So the first one says Macedonia. It was Henrietta who bet that, by the way. And she bet all of her money, and she's wrong. So she's at 0.
Correct.
The man says Cairo, but he's wrong, but he's left with $101.
Hmm.
So then it's Fran's turn, and she starts by just saying, she has a whole story.
I have it if you
Oh,
want it.
okay. Yeah, if you want to, verbatim.
Well, my mother and I were on our way to Israel on LL, and who was sitting next to us but Diana Kind, aka Barbara Streisand's mother, in coach. They got a lot of unresolved issues, those two, on her way to see the pyramids in Giza. So your response is Giza? Asks poor Alex Trebek. No, Mr. In a Hurry. But talking about Streisand in Egypt reminded me of Omar Sharif, who, according to my Funny Girl trivia book, was not the first actor cast in the role of Nikki Arnstein. Miss Fine! He
And
finally
it's like a
interjects.
Miss Fine that like it's a Mr. Sheffield Miss Fine.
Correct. Correct. And so Fran finally gives her answer. What is Alexandria?
Yes.
And
And she
she's
is
right.
correct. And she is dancing around, um, winning it with a total of $200.
Exactly.
But
She's
and
so
so she's
happy.
like she is so happy and she's dancing around the studio and dancing up to the camera, but even then she does her little checking teeth thing where she
Mm-hmm.
rubs her teeth as she's dancing around. But yeah, so Fran won Jeopardy with a
Yeah.
total of $200.
Woohoo!
It was like a last minute, because she was in the hole.
Correct. She
Right
stole
at
a
the
victory from the jaws of defeat.
exactly. So would you like us to take us to the kitchen?
I would love to. So we're in the Sheffield kitchen, and Fran has her um, non-monetary winnings, shall we say, on the counter. And she is on the phone. Hello, Jeopardy. I want to talk about my rice-a-ronis. According to my calculations, I got 6 urban butter and 6 broccoli au gratin, but only 5, and she like counts them with her finger, white cheddar and herb. Now, someone over there isn't too smart. Isn't that ironic? Um, and we don't really see too much of a resolution on that front, but Maxwell comes in and he's talking to her, and you won one game, you don't have to be the returning champion. I like you just the way you are. And she thanks him, but says, if you ever saw me just the way I am, you wouldn't recognize me. And then there's a knock on the door, and Frank, lights up and opens the door. You remember Roger Clinton, the president's brother? And Maxwell, they shake hand, hi, whatever. It's amazing you had time to stop by, what with your brother's job and all. And Fran explains, Roger's the guy renting the townhouse next door. And Roger explains, just till 96, then I'm buying it. And he then further explains, I just stopped by because my brother wanted me to drop this off. And he hands an envelope to Maxwell. And Maxwell opens it. It's an invitation to the Renaissance weekend. And he's clearly very excited. And Fran says, thank you so much, Roger. You're a doll. Gee, I saw that gorgeous canopy bed. It looks just like the one in the Lincoln bedroom. And he explains, not after I paint it white. And then he leaves. And Maxwell is sort of suspicious and asks her if she had anything to do with this invitation showing up. And she's like, oh, please, Mr. Sheffield. I can't even get Brighton to put his dirty underwear in the hamper. Do you think I can influence the president of the United States of America? And he like sort of takes that as at face value and writes it off. But then he's like walking out the room, and she stops and says, meanwhile, I think you should pick up a corsage. You're taking out Janet Reno tonight. And that's the end of the episode.
Yep.
So
Yep.
unless you want to add anything to that last scene, I probably shouldn't have called it so quickly.
Nope. That's the episode.
So, are there any big picture things you want to talk about before we jump into our shticks?
Well, just I think you kind of commented on it earlier that I feel like they dumbed down Fran a lot in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Like compare, like again, they're really trying to emphasize this whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised that Cece's brother, although they have a weird relationship, wasn't like a jerk to Fran.
He wasn't a jerk, but he also wasn't that nice. He used her as a pawn in his game.
Yeah. But
go ahead.
But that's like kind of like it was interesting because there was never a reveal that there was a bet, right? You would almost expect that at some point the cat would be out of the bag, everybody would learn that there's this bet. That's not the case because Maxwell kept it to himself. Um, and like there's never on screen, at least, any explanation to Fran, or there's no Fran questioning why suddenly Noel gets to go get Cece's thoroughbred.
It's like she's totally oblivious to that entirely.
Yes, yes. So, it was interesting because the plot went in a different direction than what I was expecting. Because again, I thought at some point the bet would be revealed, but I guess to some extent, Fran remains in blissful ignorance on that whole um, subplot.
That's an interesting point because you're right. We don't see Noel again. Like he's not even there to watch her on Jeopardy.
Nope. He got her on Jeopardy and then went off with the horse, riding off into the distance.
Correct. I didn't particularly like what we've already talked about, Fran being dumbed down. I didn't particularly like the relationship between Cece and her brother because it kind of skeeved me out a little bit. I also didn't like how childish Maxwell was. Like how
like getting gleeful, like
exactly. Like he couldn't believe that an intelligent man of the world would be interested in Miss Fine for anything other than like nefarious purposes.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care for that. It doesn't paint him in a great color either.
Mm-hmm. Although, like, part of that could just be, well, partly it's the jealousy factor, but
Yeah, I guess, but
Niles at least confronts him.
yeah, and he
Says,
denies it vehemently.
mm-hmm.
Um,
So, so yeah, some of it felt a little out of character, I guess I would say.
yeah, it
Like
really did.
they were just made to fit like this particular plot point.
Yeah, and also we didn't see too much of the kids like at all.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we haven't really seen much of the
We
kids.
haven't seen much of them in season 3.
And granted, we're only 2 episodes in, but still.
Correct. Very small spoiler. We'll see more of Brighton next week. So
Okay.
we'll see more of at least, and we'll see a bit more of Gracie. So we will see Maggie very briefly. So we'll see the kids a little bit more. But yeah, so far we haven't seen too much of them.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think I'm out of big picture points. You want to talk about favorite fashion?
Sure. So again, I'm not sure if it's favorite necessarily, but you've already talked about some of the different outfits, and I kind of mentioned in passing Fran's Jeopardy outfit.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's worth, you know,
Talking
worth
about it length.
discussing. Yes, because it's kind of like a teal, shiny. How would you describe it, Debbie?
I would agree with your analysis that it is teal and shiny, but it also has an animal print on it.
Yes, like kind of subtle, but not really.
Yeah, I mean
Like,
it's there, but like it's not the first thing you see. The first thing you see is the bright teal color.
because it's kind of like a slightly, I want to say darker shade.
Or maybe turquoise. Like it's somewhere between teal and
Yeah.
turquoise.
Yeah.
But also notably, it's a two-piece dress.
Mhm.
So it has like a jacket, and I think the jacket we see it. I think it basically is the same length as the dress itself. And it has the big shoulder pads. Let's not forget those.
No
Um,
tags because she's already cut them.
right, she was gonna keep it. Um, it's frankly not my favorite look on her.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
long sleeve jacket, big shoulder pads. I think it closes in the front, so it like has like a V. The jacket has like a V, like V cut. I won't even call it a V neck. And then the dress itself is like mid breastbone, I guess, mid chest. So like her neck and like the top part of her chest are exposed, and she has her hair down. And I think we've
I
seen a lot of
noticed again,
this.
yeah, her hair again, kind of like with episode 1 of this season, is kind of like that parted in the front,
Hmm.
which
Yeah,
differed from the earlier hair looks from seasons 1 and 2.
correct. Correct. I agree on all fronts.
Hmm. So did you have like a favorite that you didn't talk about yet, or is there any other outfit you wanted to talk about?
Well, I don't really like the fashion too much in this episode.
Yeah.
But I do think there are two other outfits worth mentioning. The
Hmm.
first one is in the scene, the two scenes in the living room with her and Noel. She's wearing like a skirt and a jacket. So it's a black skirt, black jacket with like red embroidery, and there's like a
Hmm.
pattern. And then it's over a black turtleneck. I think that's probably my favorite outfit she wears in this episode, but frankly, they're again not a great fashion episode.
Yeah.
And then the second thing worth the only other outfit worth mentioning, I think it's also the only other outfit she wears besides the bathrobe we've already covered. Um, in the final scene where she's calling the Jeopardy people to complain about her raceronies, she's wearing a black jacket with, it's not a pattern, but it has like pictures on it. Like one is a palm tree, one is like the sun. Um, it's very colorful, even though it's a black jacket.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. So then, shall we turn to notable New Yorkers?
Sure.
So we once again have a Dr. Quinn medicine woman reference.
Yep.
I feel like we had one of those not too long ago.
I feel like every time she comes up, I'm reminded that I should go back and rewatch it.
I don't think I ever like watched it. I've only heard of it.
Maybe our next podcast.
Hmm. But there's a mention, of course, all in this first scene about TV Guide.
Mhm.
Again, do you remember the days where you'd have to sit and watch as it scrolled by to try to catch the channel you were looking for? And if you missed it, you had to wait until it scrolled all the way back.
Vaguely, very vaguely.
Yes. Um, so again, in this particular exchange between Fran and Brighton, they mentioned the ghosts of Mrs. Muir.
That was an American romantic fantasy film from 1947 based on Josephine Leslie's 1945 novel, which was published under pseudonym R.A. Dick, about a woman who rents Gull Cottage in California, which is haunted by its previous owner who had frightened other previous residents out, but begrudgingly lets her stay and they fall in love.
Mhm.
That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. Very strange sounding movie.
Then we have Family Affair.
An American sitcom about a bachelor engineer, also according to our friends at Wikipedia.
The Munsters.
We've talked about them before.
Yes, we have. Not to be confused with the Adams Family.
Correct.
Bewitched, I feel like we've also talked about, right?
I think we must have. I did write a little summary because I'm familiar with the show. American sitcom about a house witch, Samantha Stevens, and her mortal husband, Darren, and their life together.
Hmm. Dumb and Dumber.
1994 comedy about two, and I quote from our friends at Wikipedia, two dumb but well-meaning friends from Providence, Rhode Island, end quote.
Don't know if you put it on the list, but affirmative action.
I did.
Okay.
And instead of trying to describe it myself, according to our friends at Wikipedia, they define affirmative action as follows. Affirmative action refers to a set of policies and practices within a government or organization seeking to include particular groups based on their gender, race, sexuality, creed, or nationality in areas in which they are underrepresented, such as education and employment.
Mhm. Again, reference to President Clinton, who we've talked about before.
Yes, we have.
Now, I didn't look this up, but did you check if the Renaissance
Yes, it
weekend?
did.
It is.
It is.
Oh,
So I'm actually
okay.
going to quote from their webpage. And it's a little bit longer of a summary, but I thought it captured what it is pretty well. In 1981, friends lamented with Phil and Linda later that there were rare occasions to learn from their most fascinating work in everyday life acquaintances in a personal, substantive way. Consequently, 60 families shared the latter's Renaissance weekend, their 4-day New Year's house party on Hilton Head Island. For 3 decades, that gathering spirit, an extended family reunion, has distinguished each of the 140 plus Renaissance weekends, a cross-generational continuing conversation among innovative leaders from diverse fields. That's the quote.
Interesting.
Yeah, and actually, Bill Clinton is one of the, he's the co-chair. I'm double checking. Yeah, he's the co-chair, or he's on their webpage listed as the co-chair. Their webpage is renaissanceweekend.org for those who are interested.
Felicia Richard.
Yep, American actress, director, and singer. She was the first Black actress to win the Tony for Best Actress. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
For the umpteenth time, Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Our friend, or shall I say, our enemy. We're clearly Team Maxwell.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I will say, when Noel comes in, did you recognize the actor?
I did not, but I did look him up.
Okay. So for our friends at home, the actor is Michael McKean, who I know best as playing Mr. Green in the 1980s version of Clue.
Excellent, because that was the first reference that I recognized.
Yes, no, that is how I know him best.
Mr. McKean, I apologize for not recognizing you if you just happen to be a listener of our podcast. Please let us know. We'll have you on as a guest. It'll be great.
So yeah,
Continue.
so
Sorry.
I immediately, he walked in the door. I'm like, that's Mr. Green.
According to his IMDb page, he was also in. He's also known for his role in This Is Spinal Tap, Better Call Saul, and then a couple things that I've heard of. Rugrats. He apparently played Grandpa Lou Pickles.
Oh, really?
I didn't know that. Yeah, he also was in Good Omens, and apparently he was on a number of episodes of Pinky and the Brain.
Interesting.
So definitely doing our 90s nostalgia with the references to the Rugrats and Pinky and the Brain.
Mm-hmm. So whenever he walks in and there, Cece says she smells Lady Stetson. Did you look that up?
I did not. I should have.
Okay.
It's Lady Stenson.
Stenson?
It's a cologne spray.
Yes, I figured it was some type of perfume or scent. They talk about the Beamer and the Benz, different types of cars.
Yep.
I just laughed whenever a friend was like, juicy juice. That kind of of the 90s. I'm not gonna lie. But then of course we get a reference to Gilligan's Island when she talks about, hanging out with the professor helps Marion and Ginger.
Right.
Now, Nick at Night. Do you remember Nick at Night, Debbie?
I'm aware of what it is. I didn't have cable growing up. So
I always watched Nick at Night.
I mean, cable was like one of those things that like when we would go away on vacation, specifically like for Passover, I remember like my parents would like try to send me and Charlie, my brother, to camp. But all I wanted to do was just like sit and watch cable with all the cartoons and the old TV shows. But anyway, that's what I remember. Yes, I'm familiar with what Nick at Night is.
Yeah, no, I would kind of like stay up a little late watching Nick at Night, and that's where I saw, most of the classic, TV shows, the Munsters, the Monkeys, all that stuff. I Love Lucy.
Was Bewitched one of them?
Maybe. Because I can't remember, because like I also remember watching like I Dream of Jeannie and like all that kind of stuff, and I can't be for sure if they were all Nick at Night or other channels as well. But
yeah, no, I feel like I watched Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie like in that sort of vein. Anyway,
Yeah. So then there's a reference to Clarence Thomas.
who everyone now knows who he is. If you haven't, try reading a newspaper or news
Yeah.
online. I don't want to give him more airtime. Do you?
Nope.
Okay, moving
the
on.
mod, the Mod Squad.
An American crime drama about 3 rebellious, disaffected young social outcasts who are convinced to work as, and I quote, unarmed undercover detectives as an alternative to being incarcerated. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm. Uh, Lamborghini, another type of car. But we've talked about Jeopardy before, and obviously that's like the big thing of this particular episode.
Correct.
Yeah. So studs.
An American game show which was similar to Love Connection and The Dating Game, but, and I quote, relied more heavily on sexual innuendo and double entendre, end quote. That's according also to our friends at Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm. And Where's Waldo?
I didn't look it up. I mean, I tried to, but I found Where's Wally, which is
You
the
couldn't
British
find
version.
him?
Exactly. I couldn't find him.
You couldn't find Waldo?
Where's Waldo is something from my and Bernadette's childhood. It usually came in a book, I think,
Mhm.
or in a magazine where you had to find Waldo, who was a guy who would wear a little hat, like a beanie hat, and a striped t-shirt, striped shirt.
Mhm. Yep. We've talked about Alex Trebek before, the former host of Jeopardy.
Right.
Now, again, I didn't look it up, but I'm assuming when Fran's talking about the 72 Mercury,
I believe that's a car.
yeah, in response to monarchy. William Shatner.
That's one I missed.
He can't. Has he come up before?
He has not.
He hasn't. Because again, why she probably said William Shatner is because he played James T. Kirk on Star Trek. And he was also like in one of the like better known episodes of the Twilight Zone. I don't know if you've watched the Twilight Zone, but the episode where like he's flying in a plane and he sees some type of like monster on the wing, but like nobody believes him.
I'm
Does that ring a
familiar.
bell?
No, I'm familiar with that episode. I've never watched it, but The Simpsons did part of a Treehouse of Horror based off that.
Okay. So yeah, it was William Shatner, I believe, who was in that particular episode. Yeah, he's an actor, Canadian actor, in fact.
Yes.
Let's see.
Queen for a Day.
Mm-hmm.
So that one, according to our friends at Wikipedia, this I found really interesting. It started out as a radio game show, but eventually became a television game show, and it aired in total from 1945 to 1964, which I thought was a very long time for any program that isn't, soap opera to be on.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cabernet. Cabernet.
I believe that's a wine.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Me and Fran, we both don't know.
Spanish either.
It's French, I think. Okay, good.
Yep. Again, there's also a reference to, she just said Liz, but it's another reference to Elizabeth Taylor, who we've talked about before. And White Diamonds is, I believe, a specific perfume.
Yes, and so this I found interesting. According to our friends at Wikipedia, the White Diamonds, as you said, was a perfume by Elizabeth Taylor that launched in 1991. There actually was a commercial made for it, but it wasn't like a commercial like you would immediately think of. It was apparently a short film which ran for a total of 2 minutes and 45 seconds. Apparently department stores would air it like in their stores and serve popcorn to their customers. A shorter version, which lasted only a minute, aired as an actual television commercial. I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I mentioned this previously, but we will see Elizabeth Taylor in the episode Where's the Pearls? So.
we kind of discussed, the Jeopardy questions and answers. There's a reference to a Thomas. Did you know who though specifically, or no?
For the English muffins.
Yes.
I I'm going to read to you from the webpage, thomasbreads.com/about, and I quote, in 1880s, Samuel Bath Thomas created the original Nooks and Crannies English muffin after moving from England to the United States. He used a top secret process that included griddle baking to make a muffin that was crunchy on the outside and soft on the inside. He later opened his own bakery in New York City. Soon after, Thomas's English muffins became a popular part of the American breakfast. Thanks to Mr. Samuel Thomas, Thomas's English muffins is the #1 selling English muffin and an all-American classic, end quote. I can't believe you've never had an English muffin.
Oh, I have. I just didn't know it was called fork split.
Oh, that's the key part. That's how you get the nooks and crannies. Gosh, I'm gonna have to have you over and make you breakfast.
Oh, okay. Not gonna turn down breakfast.
Excellent.
Cleopatra.
The last.
Has she come up before?
Maybe.
No. I don't know.
I don't think so. She was the last active Ptolemaic ruler of Egypt. I was gonna say England. That's clearly wrong. Egypt.
In an alternate universe, she ruled England.
Exactly.
Yeah. So again, with the final, there's mention of Macedonia, Cairo, Alexandria. There's a mention to Diana Kind, who Fran herself explains is Barbara Streisand's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Giza, Omar Sharif.
An Egyptian actor who is best known for his roles in American, British, French, and Italian productions, including Funny Girl, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
And then
Nikki Arnstein.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that the reference I pulled was a professional con artist and gambler who is most widely known as being the second husband of Fanny Brice. So he's also a character in Funny Girl. That's according, the first part's according to our friends at Wikipedia. The second part is from Debbie's Powers of Deduction.
Trademark.
Yeah, exactly.
You mentioned the rice-a-roni.
I did. I didn't look it up though.
Yeah, no, it's the San Francisco treat, I think, if my memory serves me correct. Right? Is that the
that I couldn't tell you.
Again, that kind of makes me think of the 90s, so kind of bleeding into 90s nostalgia. I'm pretty sure it's the San Francisco treat. Anyway.
I believe you. I'll believe you, just like you'll believe me that the fork split English muffin is, how the nooks and crannies are created.
So Roger Clinton, again, showing up.
Yup.
His brother. And Janet Reno.
So I think we did talk about her, but she's worth mentioning again. She was the Attorney General under Clinton from 1993 to 2001. She was the first woman to hold the post, and she's the second longest serving Attorney General in American history. That's according also to our friends at Wikipedia.
Nice. Did you have anything else on your list?
Just one. El Al, and I know I'm mispronouncing it. It's the airline. It's the Israeli airline, and according to Wikipedia, it is the only commercial airline that has equipped its airplanes with a missile defense system, which makes it one of which A, protects planes from surface-to-air missiles, and two, it's considered like one of the safest airlines in the world because it has very strict security procedures. That's also according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Yeah, so that kind of
brings us to 90s nostalgia. Yeah. I agree.
What's the word? It's been a long day, Debbie.
It's been a long week, and it's not even the end of the week yet.
Yes. Transitions. Yes. Transitions us to Yiddishkop.
Oh, yes. Sorry. I don't know why I always put 90s nostalgia first. Okay, so schmear. This is a word we've heard before. It's, basically a slather to put on, often heard with cream cheese and bagels for a little nosh. Kvelling is the word we hear from Fran, which I don't think we've talked about before. It's, to burst with pride. It's Kveller is also the name of like I think they gear themselves towards like parents, but like it's a Jewish parents webpage. They talk about parenting things. And then more interestingly, I guess, borscht. So borscht, I wasn't really sure if I was going to find it as something like having like a Jewish hook or not, but apparently I was not to be disappointed. According to History Today, borscht was a favorite of many Jews who lived in rural shtetls in Poland, Ukraine, and Russia. Particularly among Ashkenazi Jews, red borscht, cooked without meat, became a familiar dish during Passover, while cold vegetarian borscht was served with a generous helping of sour cream and was eaten at the daytime meal during Shavuot, or Shavuos, depending on how you want to pronounce that. So, yeah. Did I miss any?
I don't think so.
Woohoo! All right. 90s nostalgia.
Yes.
Old cars.
Yes. Old cars. And I mean, even just like the set of Jeopardy,
I was
like
going to say that.
like it's very much like the 90s version.
It looked very dated.
Yes. Trying to think, we obviously some of the outfits we've kind of discussed very, very 90s.
Mhm.
But is there anything that really, 'cause we don't have any kind of cameras or anything in this episode. Was there,
Right.
oh, the Dollar Theater.
That was what I was
You
going to
don't
say.
you don't really hear about the Dollar Theater anymore.
Correct. So the Dollar Theater. Not knowing that Clarence Thomas sits on the Supreme Court seems very dated this week.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um,
I already mentioned TV Guide.
TV Guide. Also, kind of the whole like Cece's brother, Fran, even asking, is he short? Or is he short? What is it? Short, married, and bald? Like, if she had heard that Cece's brother was coming, she could have just looked him up.
That's true. You could just like easily Google.
Exactly. Short, ugly, and married. That's what she asked.
That's what it's, I think, I was looking and I think it was ugly.
But yeah,
that
those are the things.
That was kind of, I was wondering if the Renaissance Weekend first was a real thing and if it was still happening.
Apparently, I think it is. Yeah. They celebrated their 25th anniversary back in 2005 or 2006, according to their webpage. Yeah, 2006. So, yeah, which is a kind of cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got nothing else for 90s nostalgia. Do you?
No. How about some future fun?
All right. We will never see Noel again.
As with many characters.
I mean, we meet them and then they leave and then they're forgotten. Just like Fran's sister, just like Cece's father, like Maxwell's parents when we meet them individually. So that's kind of weird. We will, on the other hand, see Roger Clinton again later this season. Yes, in the episode Where's Fran? That'll be later this season. On the other hand, there will be stand-ins for Bill and Hillary in season 6 in the episode Oh Say Can You Ski? And then finally, this is not the last game show to appear on the Nanny. In season 5, Fran becomes a regular on the Rosie O'Donnell show. I mean, that's not really a game show, but still television. And in season 6, Maxwell appears on Hollywood Squares after Andrew Lloyd Webber canceled. And that becomes like a huge deal because timing is very important in that episode. And he's supposed to appear on Hollywood Squares at the same time he's supposed to be doing something else. I won't say what, but timing is important. So yeah. Um, that's what I have for us for future fun.
Okay, so no
Time to read.
kisses. No
No
kisses.
kisses. No, none at all. Um,
So episode rating 1 to 5, and it's my turn this week.
oh, okay, excellent. I like it when it's your turn.
Yes, except when you really like an episode.
Correct, correct. When I love an episode, I'm just like, hurry up, Bernadette. Let me give it a 5 already.
So I think I'm gonna give this episode a 4.5. Um, Partly because again, I felt some of the stuff was a little out of character, like as you mentioned, they dumbed her down.
Hmm.
But I still found it pretty enjoyable, just not
Hmm.
as much as last week. How about you?
I'm actually surprised you gave it such a high rating. Um, I've been going back and forth about what to give it because this is an episode that I won't say is iconic, but it's one that, like, if you said to me, Franny and the Professor, I know exactly which episode you're talking about. It's one I've seen many times. Um, I'm not saying I go out of my way to watch it. I'm also not saying I go out of my way to not watch it. Um, I don't care for how Fran is a pawn. I don't care for how they dumb her down. I don't care for the relationship between Cece and her brother. I don't care for Maxwell being, so gleeful to tell her that she's being used as a pawn. Um, I don't really care for all of that. So I think I'm gonna give it a 3.5,
Okay.
which is slightly higher than I was planning to give it originally. So you convinced me to nudge it up by half a point. Um,
No
so
pressure.
no, none at all. Um,
And we can always adjust at the end.
correct, correct. I mean, for me, I'm also thinking about some of the other episodes we have coming up this season, and I mean, there's some coming up soon, some coming up a little bit not so soon that I know I'm going to rate very highly, and just in
Mhm.
comparison, this one just doesn't measure up.
Yes, you have the advantage of foreknowledge.
I do. It's wonderful. So, all right. Do you have anything else?
I do not.
All right. That's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next week when we'll be discussing episode 51, Dope Diamond.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.